Go live in the country. It's the final lockdown.
Welcome to your awakening. Please take care as your reality is adjusted.
To the final lockdown. Do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do-do. Stop sharing that one. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and all the rest of you, whatever you want to define yourself as. And welcome back, another edition of Sol Excalibre this Moon Day evening. It is the 30th of the 11th, 2020. Star date 3011 2020. And it is the Beaver Moon, Beaver full moon. I think tonight or through to tomorrow. Yeah, I'm not sure what makes it a beaver moon. But it's supposedly the beaver moon. You know, you got different moon for each phase of the year now. All these different types of moons that they keep telling us are popping up. I know some of the like classic and traditional ones, but beaver moon. I thought, are we going to be seeing lots of beavers everywhere or something? Beavers can be quite secretive and private. It's part of the reason why they build their dam and their set the way that they do, because it's sort of a, you know, keeping hidden their little den away from the eyes of predators, you know. So they like their privacy. And funnily enough, there was an article, a news story about beavers in Wales, I think it was. Wild beavers, I think, or beavers that have been reintroduced in Wales, and they're building a dam. And I said, maybe there's some kind of subtle messaging going on here with beavers and the beaver moon. I wonder why they're sort of suggesting that to people. Maybe it's just me. Maybe they've done that deliberately just for me. I doubt it very much. Anyway, moving on from the silliness, yes, it is. And this current moon phase, it's going to be a full moon, and it's called the beaver moon. So keep an eye out for those beavers. You never know when you spot a beaver in the wild, and you go to look, and you're not sure. And is that a beaver? And it's gone. Yeah. You thought you saw one, and then it's gone. Hello to everyone in the chat room. Sorry, I was just scrolling down, distracting myself. I'll say a quick hello to everyone. Quick hello. Hello. Now. Hello. It's in early 7:11. Well, that's a good time number to join in the chat. And Taz is in the chat room. Hello, Taz. And lots of Tathro. Hello. And just space goat farts. Can you still smell them if you're wearing a mask? You know, those space goat, I should say, farts, you know. You can still smell them even with the mask on. The Rebel, hello. And New Being, hello. Fruits for Taz, okay. Lowlands Pete, hello. I'm losing my voice again now. Now that I finally got rid of that long rhino that I had, I can still hear it a little bit in my sinuses, but it's just made my voice all crackly now. New Being, hello, and I sings the news, hello. I'm going to play some more music in a moment once I've finished doing me rambling at the chat room. I'm scrolling down. Dottie's in the chat room, hello. Big T. I've got some good memes to share as well that Tony's done recently. Soul Bollocks, hello. And Ridiculizer, hello mate. I'll play that tune in a minute. So safe, hello. Into the fray, once more into the breach, dear friends. Dinny Carr, hello. And the realist, hello. And Alan McVicker, hello, Big Al. Hope you're doing all right. And I hope you ain't losing your voice. Not with the, you know, you need to be able to sing the way you do. Don't need a crackly voice like this. Sidefish, hello. Scrolling. Patrick Nee, hello Patrick, thanks for the links. I'm going to mention the one in a bit, the one with the two doctors talking about their research. And one must, hello. Boris looks like a beaver. Yeah, I could agree with that. Yeah, he does look a bit like a beaver. Gammon beaver. Maybe he's a particular kind of beaver that's common to these northern climes of the British Isles. You know, it's not like the beavers in other countries that are, you know, a bit more ruddy in complexion and they got the full fur. No, he's a bit of a pasty gammon looking beaver. Or maybe we're just looking at the wrong end of him, you know, and his face is actually the beaver's tail. But anyway, enough silliness. Yes, hello, welcome back once again. I've got a few things to mention as we go into stuff. As I do, I'm going to rant about a couple of things probably and show you some screen share of news articles and stuff. And there's only really one point I'm going to bang on about, which you probably guess because it's in the subtitle this week, partly based on one of the comments Bojo made the other day about how as we approach Christmas and all the debacle about the 5 days of freedom over Christmas, and he made a comment about how it is the season to be jolly careful. He added that extra careful on the end of that phrase. And I thought, yeah, okay, we can do the same kind of thing, because judging by how things have progressed over the last week and certainly over the last weekend with a lot of the protests in various places across the UK and in other countries, I think it's pretty fair to say that we're in a Stasi regime now. So it is the season to be jolly Stasi. That seems to be the smiley-faced fascism, as George Carlin called it, that is now fully eminent on the streets, fully emanated onto the streets of society. Just look at the way the police are cracking down on all those crazy conspiracy theorists and anti-vaxxers who are supposedly, allegedly, really secret, evil Nazis in disguise as old grannies who are just protesting about how they think the lockdown is ridiculous and that the young people should be allowed to go about their lives because those old people are not afraid of dying. But no, you're supposed to believe that they're evil Nazis in disguise. Anyway, yeah, I'm going to play a tune that Ridiculizer uploaded just the other day. Go and check his channel out. I'll put the link in the side chat while I'm thinking about it before I play it. So go and check his channel out, listen to his other songs. He's done some fantastic songs over the years. Yeah, there's a lot of people that are working away in the background that you often don't get to hear about because they don't get all the fancy promotion and all the big support from the mainstream and all that usual kind of bullshit of the media industry. But, you know, you can find some gems hidden away in the background behind the sparkly facade of the circus show. And I will screen share with audio, please. Thanks to StreamYard for making it easy for me. And I'm going to shut up for 5 minutes and play this song from Ridiculizer.
Welcome to the cashless society of social criminalism with new currency. Here we do just exactly what we're told. Cup your mouth, show your ears, here's your new blindfold. A bad monkey, no banana, but if you lose dive. You don't conform, you find it hard to survive. A universal basic income if you adhere to the mold and keep buying the bullshit till your soul is sold. I feel like everybody's rolling nice these days. Trying to get real truth. I scream and hide behind the separate all of mankind. The intersectional divide prevents a tumbling of the tide. Faceless collectivism, discard to sovereignty, unlabeled in return for your identity. I feel like everybody's real nice these days, trying to give me the truth. I just can't trust what he says. Talking and also walking their face. Come off your man. Show me the real truth. Come off your man. They can trust you. Come off your man. Show me the real truth. Come off your man.
Yes. So one thing I've always disliked is DJs that talk over the last section of a song. You know, they just can't help themselves, but they've got to say something before the song's got to the actual end. You know, you've heard the whole thing. So, yeah, that's why I waited for a moment, let the song fully, complete and finish. I don't like to interrupt good music while it's playing. And I can stop the screen sharing now, get the right button. And hello to Stewie and Wishfix and Paula and Jason Edwards and Sonia White. Hello. Thanks for joining in the chat, guys. Just while I was listening to the music, and nice, hello, just seeing you in the chat. While I was listening to the music, I was checking the chat room and scrolling up and down. And as I showed on the screen while we were listening, even Bojo's dog has had COVID. I'm sorry, I'm going to laugh at the moment because some of the stuff has just become so ridiculous. The Covidian cult, this new religion of the Covidians. I think Thomas Sheridan, I heard calling them Covidanity. I think he's trying to put COVID and Christianity together. I think Covidians just makes it easier. This new religion of the Covidians are beginning, or maybe they have been for a while. It's just sort of really now starting to settle in just how insane it is. And it's the kind of insane that just makes me want to laugh, because they will believe such outright ridiculous things and extreme contradictions. I know we've banged on about this a lot recently. The dissonance is so loud, it's like a ringing bell, but they seem to become deaf to that ringing bell, like you see in people that have a somewhat fundamentalist belief system, where they'll just outright deny anything that brings their belief system into question. Yeah.
It's a powerful thing, Cookie. That's the
Yeah.
thing, isn't it? It's integrated into you from birth. And it's not something that's easily broken down if you still see it as being your savior, as being your help.
I think it adds in well with what Days was saying in the lyrics of his song. You know, the masks that we develop and the ones that we're given by the system. You know, I think it's fair to say it's a truism for near enough everybody. We all have different masks that we wear for different occasions.
Yeah.
And part of the process of life, if you bother to pay any attention, you know, an unexamined life is not worth living. Part of that self-examination is the realization of your own masks and maybe working towards being a more genuine being by being able to converse with others with either no masks preferably or as few as possible. Yeah.
Well, I see more and more when, you know, that footage I saw at the weekend with the protest in London, all the police wearing masks outside. It seems that, you know, that seems to, and I'm seeing, you know, still people wearing them outside and still in cars on their own. And we said this for months now, and still people are still determined to follow it through. And there's a lot on, like I say, that belief system is so strong. It's so like ingrained.
A lot of them do still seem to be struggling with the wearing of the masks, though, because watching the footage, I'm not going to play the footage. I'm just screen sharing this just to make the point that, you know, the footage is out there if you want to go and look for it. This is even RT UK did a little coverage of it, but it's, you know, it's just a few clippings. But the point I was going to make is like, you see constantly the police, like his mask on the left has slipped down, and you see him constantly doing this, touching the mask and pulling it back up again, which if you are supposedly following the protocol of wearing the mask to protect yourself from a supposed pathogen, as soon as you start touching that mask, that's it, it's defunct. It needs to be binned and you need to apply a new one.
Yeah, every 20 minutes anyway, you should change it if you have to work for longer periods, if you're working in, say, healthcare and stuff. And like I say, you touch it on anything, it becomes contaminated, it gets binned. These guys seem to be wearing these all day.
Yeah, probably. You know. I dread to see the black bag if they even bin them properly. You know, they certainly won't be putting them in a hazard bin. But I dread to see just how many they're going through. And then you think of all the ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching of some of Handycock's mates that he's given a backhand quango to, you know, to produce these masks. And of course, there's literally thousands required on a daily basis just to supply the police force, let alone the general public.
Well, the Daily Mail and other, you know, tabloids have been onto that one, pointing that one out for some months now, that they've given all their mates all the contracts, the multi-million-pound deals and whatever, and suddenly these businesses are, you know, profitable, you know, and have had literally hundreds of millions of pounds given to them to produce the PPE. And
some of them with no prior experience.
No, none at all. I think one was an ex-something over there. It's completely different business, but no, we'll move into PPE because my mate works in the government and he'll give us a contract worth 150 million quid. We just switch over. What do you need? You don't need much, I don't think. So it was worth the investment, you know?
It's a little bit like the switch over that Bill Gates is currently doing. Where he's gone from dealing with viruses in the software that he sold people to instead supposedly addressing viruses that just happen to naturally occur at the right time.
Well, I do like your title, "'Tis the Season to be Jolly Stasi," because it fits in with what was going on all weekend, all over Europe and the world, you know, where people are beginning to stand up and protest about their own situation. Even in South America, they're out there doing stuff, and it's global. This sort of, you know, dissatisfaction, and this people are fed up with it, like I say, and going out more and more.
It is, I think, clearly eminent now, as in it's easily, you know, observable in different parts of the world. You can look and see how each of those supposedly separate countries and nation states, you know, supposedly they're all independent and decide their own course and whatever, but They're all following pretty much the identical pattern, the same identical pattern. They're all becoming much more dictatorial, and they're all trying to institute or begin, maybe that's not quite accurate because this has been building up for a while, but they're certainly trying to mainstream the surveillance state element of a lot of what's going on. The Stasi relied on the general populace to be grassing on each other and informing the authorities on their neighbours and even their own relatives, etc., etc. But of course, at the time when this was taking place, when the Stasi regime was in power in Germany, in East Germany, that's going back to a time when the technology was like the telephone and an audio recording machine or a notepad and pencil, But still, they built up a massive database of files on all the individuals in the population.
Yeah.
Now, that's amplified 1,000 times through the technology available to us now. And you look around the world and they're all following pretty much the same pattern of trying to subtly, it's somewhat of a disguised fashion, they're trying to create the same system that's currently in place in China. Why is that? Sorry, I can't call that coincidence. If you think that's just a coincidence that this is happening on a nearly completely global scale, that they're all following that same methodology of, because of the illness, we've got to trace you all the time to make sure you ain't got it. We've got to test you twice a week. If you want to be free, you've got to submit to the test twice a week. That's a Stasi state, a surveillance state.
Yeah.
In a
disguised as a medical emergency. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it has to be done because it's for your health and you may die or you may infect me. And that's all the mainstream media narrative, by the way, all this stuff coming out, because none of it's true. It's all just the fear being pumped out to people. And they're actually, some of them are still, especially the older folk, the OAPs and stuff. A lot of them are, who were brought up in that, even that Thatcher era, in that sense, and all this believe in government. And even after the Second World War, I mentioned this many times, since then, there's been that sort of, the scooping up of people's reliance on the government, and, our generation, say, born in the 60s and onwards, have seen through that shit and questioned it more. Whereas that generation is still stuck with that. They got to be right. And I have to follow everything they say. There's still that demographic out there, people who are like that.
That is another religion, use the word loosely, with the bunny ears attached to it, religion or cult. There's a cult of statism.
Yeah.
But when you mention like the older generation, see that's perfectly appropriate for Piers Corbyn on the screen at the moment. This was from the Times on the 29th, so only yesterday. Basically telling us something that they sort of let out over the last several days anyway. So this just happens to be the Times coverage of it, about the army mobilizing their elite information warfare unit. They're talking about 77th Brigade.
Yeah.
But I kept this link open because I thought it was appropriate. It goes perfectly with the Stasi state analogy. But also to make the point of how, even though it doesn't say it directly, the language is deliberately subtle or indirect. But army spies to take on anti-vax militants, and in the headline, and then in the very first paragraph, the army is mobilizing an elite information warfare unit renowned for assisting operations against Al-Qaeda or Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. So subtly, indirectly stated there is a clear distinction that they are now calling anti-vaxxers terrorists. Yeah. It may not be, like I said, it's not directly said, it's very indirectly and subtly implied. But to a general reader in the populace at the moment, a general reader as in somebody, reading this article that is not a journalist or doesn't have a direct interest in monitoring what the media is doing in particular, they're just looking to read about the news. For the diet of media that we've been fed on, in the propaganda over the last several years, when they talk about, army spies and the British spy agencies and dealing with Al-Qaeda and Taliban, that's always as part of a description or discussion about how those people are terrorists, and our spies and our agents are working to deal with the terrorists. So therefore, for the average reader, for the general reader, they put that headline and that first paragraph together, subtly implied, indirectly in their thinking will be anti-vaxxers are terrorists. Anti-vaxxers are the equivalent of Al-Qaeda and the Taliban.
Well, all I'll say is they're too late, because people already know this stuff, so it's just bullshit, isn't it? I suppose they're propaganda, they're whatever. People know they can go and look at things. They've got their own choice. There is no mandatory vaccines. Again, they're just pushing that sort of rhetoric out there. And, it's just, as you mentioned, the 77 Brigade, this goes back a few years when they've been, on people speaking any truth of any kind, or they don't like how it, or whatever, they've been at people for quite a while now. So this, like I say, the information's out there. There's so much of it. People have just take the time to look and, again, make your own choices on things. There's a lot of information I found out over 10 years ago about things like this and thought, wow, I didn't know this, I didn't know that. And just having that sort of curious mind, which they seem to not want you to have anymore. You just have to follow that official line, and that's it. Don't ask questions. You ask questions, you end up in the handcuffs. It seems. Or there's a guy. I mean, I've seen so many bits of footage from the weekend of just people like Corbyn there and others, just being arrested just for nothing, just for holding a banner or just for standing there or whatever. They're just literally starting to talk. Yeah, just for being there, just talking to them or preventing people from going from one place to another. And it was interesting on Saturday because they went all over London a little bit, all over that area between sort of, Hyde Park and into central London from there. And it was, I'm sure people saw footage over the weekends and that, but to see the police behaviour was just, again, I mean, the crowd walking down Oxford Street were pulling the barriers down. Some of them were, ripping those barriers down and blocking the roads or whatever. So you could say that would justify the police to come and go, right, we'll stop that. That's getting a bit leery now.
And it's criminal damage, which means they can step in because that's part of the requirements to define it as a riot.
Yeah, because most people don't want to do that. They just want to be free. They don't want to be ripping and smashing things up. I think people, when they go to that, next extreme, that's when they step up their operations on people. But then, is the agent provocateurs, as we've always said, these people, some people are just genuinely angry and get silly, have a moment of madness. They're so angry and boiled up. They just go, "Argh!" I mean, some of the stuff that was being chucked, I mean, down Regent Street was quite shocking. I mean, that normally is an area where there's just shoppers or whatever, and it's just this. But to see what was going on down there with the police and the arrests they were making down in that street there was just, it is a Stasi, like I say, Stasi. It's like the police state we talked about, and there's loads of footage every week, every day coming out of people filming all of this because everyone's got the device to do it with.
They did the kind of pre-crime effect as well this time, where which is not the only time they've done this thing, but they're doing it more routinely now, where they stopped coaches en route into London that were carrying people who were going to that particular gathering. Allegedly, they were going to join an organised protest. That's the allegation of why they stopped them, etc., etc. That's the bullshit justification they used to do a pre-crime action against people that were travelling in a vehicle. So they could just pull anyone over and say, "Oh, we think you're planning to go and join in so-and-so protest." Fuck off.
We think you might be holding a sign up in about 2 hours' time, so we're going to arrest you because that's an offence. Wow. So
they're being very, very overtly proactive, as they would say. I hate that phrase because it's like proactive is a bit like an oxymoron. If you're active, then you're already doing something. So to say proactive,
that's coming out of that corporate world. That's the corporate speak language. That's what that is.
But they are making a real big effort to deal with these anti-vaxxers, and there's so many labels that are all being squished together here. All the dissidents are being tarred with a singular brush, which, as I say, is meant to imply to the reader that they are terrorists and therefore dangerous, and also it is justified that they get treated in whatever way the police deem required to deal with them. So again, you watch that footage from over the weekend of London, and one of the most common things you'll see is the TSG, the Tactical Support Group, that will turn up rapid in a van. You see them all pile out in riot gear, and they're the ones that dogpile onto elderly people to handcuff them and then take them away. And then they get handed to one of the other constabulary to be, put in a wagon to be arrested. But the TSG are the organised thugs that they use to break up gatherings and to snatch people.
Well, I could say in Germany, I mentioned just before we came on, I'm sure they have a technique where they all get together, because they've had some massive protests over there in Berlin and other places. And, you get that because, with the way they were lied to in the war, whatever, they feel that this is, they know the truth about this thing, and they're all together on this. And there's a way they sort of stop the police from snatching you from a crowd. The way they stand, or the way that they hold themselves as the big group, they cannot go snatching people just random like we see here. We need, maybe better organized, going forward, because the police are just randomly just they're out of control in my book with some of the things I've seen and some of the way they're behaving. It's just way over the top. And we had that MP last week, didn't we, moaning about the old lady getting carried into the back of the meat wagon, taking you away to the station, and he made a, that.
I wonder if he went and joined in the march on Saturday. I bet he didn't.
No, he wouldn't. No.
Well, maybe I'm just being too cynical, but I don't recall ever seeing any of them joining in the marches.
No, but like I say, this is getting more and more bigger. I was surprised and a bit shocked at the amount of violence I saw in Paris, though, on Saturday. It seemed to be getting a bit out of hand, or a bit.
There's multiplying factors with that, though, because it wasn't really just an anti-lockdown protest or anything like that, or anti-vaccine or anti-mask or whatever. It's an ongoing effect of the whole yellow vest movement, which is still ongoing. There's multiple complaints that the public have against the authorities, which includes recently in France, they're trying to bring in, I'm not sure if it's region specific for Paris, etc. I think it's the whole of France. They're trying to bring in legislation that makes it illegal for the public to film the police. And they're doing that simply because the police have been caught on film so many times being abusive and being aggressive and being way over the top and breaking the law, basically, as well as breaking people's heads.
And just recently, there was some guy just in the news recently beaten up, and there was video footage of it. They'd arrested him, they charged him, and then the video footage came out, and they had no choice but to release him and charge the officers with assault because they literally beat him up for not wearing a mask.
So it's I think it's an amplifying effect what's happening in France. Plus, you've got much more of a culture of protest in France, whereas here in the UK, it's much more, for a lot of people, it's a culture of tut and sigh and just put your head down and go back to work.
Just queue up.
Yeah, there's a lot of that happens. Just tut and sigh and stand on the spot in the playground, like you're a good adult queuing up.
The latest tonight was in Wales. They're shutting down Wales's hospitality sector on Friday from 6 p.m. All the restaurants, anything selling food, anything like that, entertainment, pubs, socializing, doing what humans do. No, all stops on Friday after 6 p.m. No alcohol either. So they've banned alcohol sales after 6 p.m. So
that's deliberately meant to cripple your social interactions, so you're less likely to spread the real infection that the authorities are actually worried about, and that's the infection of information and free thinking. But that's the infection they really don't want.
But don't forget, on the 23rd, is it? It's okay. You can go anywhere. You can go to Scotland. You can go to England for 4 days. You can go wherever you want to go and visit your family over the festive period. This virus is so, it's not so bad then.
I kept this link open as well. Thanks to T, I think, shared it. I'm not sure if it was T or Tazzy. Somebody shared it. Thank you to whoever shared it. This is from about a month ago, and I think we might have mentioned it on the Wednesday
yes,
back then. But I thought it was relevant combined with the other elements that have been happening over the weekend, where a lot of it comes back to do you just accept their authority? That really is what it boils down to. Are you going to follow the authority and, jump when they say jump, or are you going to question what they're doing? And part of this was, the mainstream media didn't cover this at all, apart from RT. Landmark legal ruling finds that COVID tests are not fit for purpose. So as it stands at the moment in the UK, I listened to Handycock's announcement this afternoon. There's a couple of interesting little bits in there. One is his direct admission, directly stating that the little clinics or test stations, wherever it's applied, are getting £14 per test for anyone that gets tested. So that's creating a financial incentive to basically sell the test in one way or another to the public. So for a lot of people out there like myself, expect to start getting more letters from your doctors and whatever saying, do you want the test? Do you want the test? Do you want the test? Because they get the cash incentive to do so.
I had a text the other day on my phone. This was a text saying, do I want the flu jab? And press this if I've had it, or yes if I. And I thought, what the fuck's this? So I just deleted the whole, blocked it and deleted it. But that's and we all got one about the government thing months ago, didn't we? Everybody got one. And
the other element was the one of the journalists actually asked him. One, it was, like they often do, they'll do like a multi-part question because they only get one time slot each.
Yeah.
First question was, is the government going to make the vaccine mandatory? I thought, great. They're asking a very direct question. Put him on the spot. Say yes or no, please. Or, do the usual political waffle.
I was going to say that's impossible, Cookie. Yes or no from one of these.
Yeah, exactly.
You never get that.
But the other part of his question was, what are you planning to do, or are you going to do anything about the situation where the hospitality trade and other businesses are asking people to prove that they've been vaccinated before they'll allow their service to that customer? Basically refusing entry to people who can't prove they've been vaccinated. And Handycock answered the first part of the question directly. He said, no, the government will not be making the vaccines mandatory. But he completely ignored the second part of the question. He did not answer it in any way whatsoever. He went on into a political waffle about how great the vaccination program is going to be. So in other words, this is clearly their intention all along. The government will not institute legislation making a mandatory requirement that everybody is vaccinated, but they will introduce legislation, or they will encourage, they will nudge, they will financially pressure the industries, the business industry, the hospitality industry, that if they don't go along with these guidelines, they'll get shut down, which is what we've been seeing. And like you were describing about the pubs getting shut down in Wales. Either you join in the rules that they're suggesting, or your business will be crippled. You'll be put out of business.
Yeah. They want you pumped full of vaccine instead of alcohol.
And you've got to prove it.
Yeah.
And that means a continuous surveillance state, because they will constantly need to test you so you can prove that you haven't been infected by the invisible enemy. That's part of the trickery here. I know I've banged on about this all year. And I do think there is a very deliberate reason why they chose the coronavirus, because it's the corona, it's the crown, it's the last line of defense of authority, that we currently have in the systems that are in place around the world. Your last line of ultimate defense was that cognitive and bodily liberty, that it is your body, your choice, it is your mind, so they are your thoughts. Whatever you choose to think of is up to you.
Remember that,
they want in on that. They want to be in there so that they can dictate what you are allowed to ingest or are required to ingest, and what you are allowed to even think.
Well, how strong is a person inside, to say, well, look, I choose something that, when there's enough information out there for people. These mRNA ones, these new vaccines that they seem to be, wanting to get everybody, jacked up on. What the hell's in them? What they do? What I've read, what I've seen myself is pretty dodgy stuff. I'd say it can even go to the extent of changing your brain patterns and things. It's that good these days, activated by light and things like this. It's
or
amazing.
by
I mean,
sub-aural frequency emitted by the little things that you stick in your ear, the pods, I think they call them.
Yeah. Well, there was a good TED talk someone posted in the reality chat. I think it was on Wednesday. I think it was John. John's still here, I think it was. And go and watch that, because that's from 2011 now. And if you think we're 2020 now, just what they've got now, and these, like I say, new vaccines coming out, all these new types of biology, synthetic biologies that we seem to be getting, sort of normalized to. It's quite, just go and look at that. It's in the reality chat from last week. I think that's where the link is. And that take to that TED talk. It's from 2011, and like I say, it's creepy shit. I have to say, it's like, wow, that is. I miss me back in the day, but this is the type of stuff, and that's 9 years ago. So what are they doing? What they're rolling out, and why have we got this? Like you say, this demand to have a vaccine. Everyone must get one, even though we can't force you. You must have it. You must have it. It's like having TV, when you must have TV. You've got to watch this TV because it's going to change your life, and we can manipulate and control you.
Part of the manipulation is to normalize it.
Yeah.
They know that if you get somebody to repeat an action for a certain length of time, they become normalized to it. And in certain ways, depending on what you're asking of somebody to do, you can, in effect, create or program new habits into people. Yeah. I know for a lot of people, they get hung up on the kind of idea of mind control and being a, remote control zombie kind of thing. You don't need to go anywhere near that kind of extreme in terms of how they can and do manipulate people and manipulate your choices, etc. That's brand marketing is a really simple sort of entry into that field of investigation. And you get into other stuff like the placebo, nocebo effect and suggestibility and hypnotism. There's loads of stuff to look at, but they don't need to necessarily force everybody to go along with it, like at the point of a gun kind of thing. They just need to encourage enough, like the influencers and all that kind of shit. Like I think Tony shared a link with me, and plus shout out to Jam Noise, who covered it earlier today as well in her video. The government is going to be employing or paying influencers and celebrities to do campaigns to encourage us all to take the vaccine. They don't need to force everybody to do it. They just need to encourage enough people so that the general population sort of look at those thought leaders, those influencers, and go, oh, well, they're doing it, so let's go along to get along. And at the same time as that carrot of influence is being dangled in front of them, they're getting the stick of the pressure plate of the requirements that are being instituted into society around us. So, for example, you can't travel internationally to most countries now unless you can prove that you've had a test to show that you're negative. I know this directly recently because of stuff going on with my family. Trying to travel to a different country, you got to get a test and prove you're safe to travel. The use of that invisible enemy gives all of the control over to those people that claim they're the only ones that can test you for it. All this idea of asymptomatic spread and infection is deliberately to cover all bases so that they can turn around and say to you, well, you can't know. How could you know? You can't get something out from under your kitchen cupboard and test yourself to see if you got this. No, you have to rely on us telling you whether you have it or not. And the same for all your neighbours. So if you see us turn up one day and say, your neighbour has got the illness, so we've got to take him away and put him in quarantine, you just got to accept it and shut up.
Yeah, even
Or-
if it's a dodgy test. Oh,
exactly right. Yeah.
fucking hell! It's like
They
it's
they don't need
unbelievable.
to they don't need to force everyone. And I've found this I've found this. I've encountered this so many times with people when I've been interacting with them over this year. Yeah.
Yeah,
For a lot of people, they don't necessarily agree with all the shit that's been going on. They've got a lot of questions about whether the numbers they're being told are accurate and all this kind of stuff. But they're more afraid of the repercussions of disobedience than they are of getting ill from the illness. The majority of people I've interacted with have the kind of attitude in terms of the illness as they do for the flu, for influenza. They're like, well, I feel okay. I'm not worried. Nobody I know seems ill. So not worried about the illness, mate. But I am worried that I'll get fined, or
yeah,
my business is going to get shut down, or I'm going to get arrested if I go to a protest, and then that's my business fucked up, or my license taken away, or this, that. People are afraid of the consequences being imposed on them via the authority.
yeah.
They're not afraid of the illness.
And it was said from the start that it wouldn't, just people with the underlying health problems that generally, saying again and again, it's like it's people have forgotten those things that was said, and still, carry on like you say, and it's just frustrating, I suppose, isn't it? Just,
Yeah.
it's just like, come on, guys, this.
I was tempted to put in the subtitle, rather than the Jolly Stasi, I was tempted to put in Jolly Disappointment.
It is.
'Tis a season to be jolly disappointed, because I think for a lot of people, they thought they were still, cognitive dissonance, repeating the same thing, expecting a different result. They were still thinking, they were still in the bargaining phase of the bereavement process, that if they did what the government is now telling them, hop on one leg and only fart sideways to make sure you don't spread the Rona, they thought if they did what's asked of them, then they're going to be released. Lo and behold, we got now to the end of November. They say they're going to drop this national lockdown on the 2nd, but the majority of the country is now actually in a harsher lockdown on tier 3 than they were under the general national lockdown. And again, this was Handicock hinting at things in his announcement today, but it's further, it's a furtherance of other things they've been hinting at. They're laying the ground ready for the following year. He hinted at the fact that even when they get the vaccine, they need to still monitor your reaction to it, so they make sure, one, it works the way they think it does. It's so effective at protecting the individual. But they need to track you to make sure that you're not infecting other people. And the vaccine may not necessarily be 100% effective, which means you'll need further vaccines later on. So if you think going, yet again, the bargaining phase, if you think that going along with the vaccine requirement is then going to release you from the lockdown, it's not. This lockdown, in one form or another, is going to carry on, because it's not a lockdown in the sense of like in a prison setting where, they lock down for 24 hours because the prisoners have been naughty today. This is not a lockdown that is expected to have an end date. This is a change of how your society functions. From now on, there will be testing stations. There will be track and trace requirements. There will be health pass proof requirements. There will be QR codes and quantum dot tattoos, or however they do it or implement it. There will be these requirements. So in effect, your nation, your country never leaves lockdown, because that's what lockdown is, a constant control of the movement of people and information.
A constant war on the invisible enemy, like we had the war with terror. But let's hope that when spring comes, we've sprung out of our slumber and we're fully on that, and we're not wearing masks and telling them where to stuff it and building a new system.
Well, I mentioned this link, which Gary shared with me earlier before he had to log off because of the curfew over there where he is. This is from Bristol. Obviously, this is current and up to date, and I think it's the kind of page where they're updating it as the story develops. So there's various links that have been added, all relevant to the situation of the military setting up a station ready for implementation of the mass vaccination program. The headline actually reads, "Army arrive at Ashton Gate to set up Britain's first mass coronavirus vaccination program updates." So I'm not 100% certain on some of this, because towards the end of the argument, in the last bit about the article, it mentions about how this is like a trial period or something to do with a trial of the vaccine. Maybe they're trialing how they're going to actually apply it, as in, do they have a tent here and a tent over there, and are you required to go to this one first? And it's like logistical testing of how they're going to actually implement it.
Well, they're going to do load us onto buses.
Well, they're going to expect you to queue up, probably, like they do for the tests.
Well, like I say, your choice, isn't it? At the end of the day,
this is the thing. The reason I wanted to mention this one as well is obviously because it's got the implications about the military being used again, but it's the fact that that's another visual reminder for the general populace that this is the extent they will go to. The illness this year has still not amounted, well, the total number of deaths this year, I should say, has not amounted to more than previous years. We're still on a par to be about the same as every year for the past several years. So there is no pandemic. There is no problem of mass death that needs to be controlled. There is no high consequence infectious disease taking place. So why are they going to an extent of having the military set up these places and do all this shit? To me, that's a good visual indicator to the populace. Like, look what the fuck they're doing. This is nothing to do with an illness. This is something else. What else could it be? Rather than just trying to preach at people, just point at things that hopefully, will register as a little seed and will make them ask themselves those questions. Why do they need to go to the extent of doing all this when last year they didn't do this for the flu? And the flu killed more numbers than this thing supposedly has this year. So why didn't they do it when we had flu season last year?
Because it wasn't ready yet.
Yeah, the campaign wasn't ready yet. The infodemic manipulation wasn't ready yet. The activation of the various puppets in positions of power hadn't been activated yet.
And what was it? The 3-day rollout of the entire UK corporate shopping mall, all laid out, literally with signs that seemed to be made in record time. It's almost like they knew something was coming.
No, they had them ready printed.
Already in the warehouse. Thinking the guys printing them, thinking, what's COVID?
Like the World Economic Forum's, web diagram where it shows all the interlinked things that they already had prepared long before this year.
Yeah, because that's what amazed me back, and a few other people said it as well. When a couple of days later you went down to your local supermarket and were horrified at just the scene that before you of like people like queuing up and things like that, thinking and this social distancing before they enforced the mask wearing. And you just see this. Anyway, lost my train of thought now. Go on.
So I was just putting the link in the chat for that article on that particular page.
Yeah,
I forgot to do it earlier.
Yeah, sorry. I was talking about the rollout. Yeah, the rollout of all the signs. And when you walked in, it was like, phoom, just. I was like, wow, these are all high grade quality signs that just don't get made in 10 minutes and 72 hours or something. Worked in the retail industry for years back in the day, and these things, have to be ordered. They take time to print up. They pre-plan these things for new campaigns. Your Christmas coming, you have to change all the fucking shop round and all that bullshit. So yeah, I'm sure none of it's changed. You have to plan it. And if you've got like a lot of stores, which they have, these guys, up and down the UK, to roll that out in the record time they did. Did they go to Bilderberg meeting last year or the year before? Maybe.
Yeah, probably.
And they were told, get your signage, get it now. You get it on the cheap as well. Those who miss out, they miss the deal of the century. Yeah, it's all that shit
just
going on, isn't it?
They'll go and see their brother, with the funny handshake, that brother.
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah,
arrange where they're going to get all their printing done and whatever.
The same brother who gets the deals on the PPE contracts. Him as well. Oh yeah. There you go. There's money to be made, lots of it. But yeah.
To go back to what you were talking about before, sort of jumped in on this article, but again, the reason I wanted to say about this article and that kind of imagery of the army being on the streets and at the test stations is because, as you were saying, I think more and more people are starting to see it for what it is. This has really become a bit of a cliche over the last few months.
Yeah,
but you see the effect of the protests. The people turning up there are a complete mixture of society. You get elderly and young and all different races and whatever. That element is growing. It keeps escalating because this is carrying on. This kind of bullshit is carrying on to the extent of, that's what I was pointing at earlier at the start. It's become like a religion. The only people that are still buying into the bullshit are people that have given up their own thinking and said, yeah, just tell me what to do. I believe. It's the same kind of abdication of authority and critical faculties to an outside group or influence or whatever you want to call them. More and more people are seeing that for what it is. So I think as we go into the new year, especially if they do start this vaccination availability soon, according to Hancock, they were sort of suggesting within the next 10 days or so, they're going to say whether they got regulatory approval, which means they'll begin rolling it out. That's going to accelerate, I think.
Yeah.
Once people start to realize that if they get that foot in the door and people actively pursue being vaccinated because they feel they need to so that they can go back to work or go into the shop or go to a club or whatever, where those services are saying, oh, we're not going to let you in unless you prove you've had the jab, that will create, an exponentially escalating effect. But I think it will do the, law of correspondence. If people start rushing at this in that manner, then a lot more people will start going the other direction. So I think we will see more and more people protesting or speaking out or opening their business, running their shop despite all the threats that are made to them.
And that number will get bigger and bigger as we said, about towards now last day in November, so December tomorrow, all the Christmas tomorrow. Oh no. Just thinking, the mainstream Christmas has begun in that sense tomorrow. Wow.
That's the point. I noticed that as well while I was looking at the picture. The fact that it's just Thatcher's in the background.
Yeah,
it's somewhat reminiscent of when Thatcher was threatening to bring the army out back then, all the poll tax riots and the miners' strikes and everything.
Yeah, I was saying that about someone today about the poll tax riots, and people, don't remember them. I think it was 89, wasn't it? 89.
I think so, yeah.
That's when it all really kicked off. But the fact that that was such an unjust tax, in a sense, everyone in the household had to pay a tax. Didn't matter, anyone over 18, didn't matter. You had to pay something.
Now you're doing it again.
Yeah.
You are in effect doing it again, because where do you think the wages come from to pay the COVID marshals? They come from your tax money. Where do you think the wages come from to pay the inspectors that go round to all the businesses and say whether those businesses are COVID compliant or not, so they get a license? What about all the bureaucrats that do all that clerical work of processing all that paperwork, even if it's virtually, not a paperless office kind of thing? You're still paying thousands of bureaucrats to do that job. That has created, in effect, a hidden tax.
Well, I think what wound the people up so much back then was the fact that this tax, it didn't matter if you were the lord of the manor or you're a dustman, you know, or you just had, you know, you did a basic job with a basic wage, you'd all pay the same or similar or less in some cases. So the unjustness of that, and then they changed it to the council tax after all the, you know, trouble, and there was riots in Trafalgar Square that got quite nasty, and yeah, and the government did a U-turn and changed the system, because I think the entire county, was it, or Liverpool or Merseyside, they didn't pay it at all. You know, everyone refused to pay it. I didn't pay mine. I didn't pay one penny of that, because it was an individual tax, you see. It wasn't like if you got a letter through the post and that was it. It said you owe us 450 quid or something.
Yeah.
And that was what you had to pay off individually. And everyone in your household, so there's 6 people living in your house, you'd all get that same bill, and you'd all have to pay it. And the guy next door who lived on his own only got 1 bill or something like that. So it was kind of, you know, it went from the old rate system. I don't know if you remember that back in the day, where you just paid a couple of quid a year for rates of your property if you owned your property, or even you rented it. There was a rates charge on it, which was only a couple of quid a month. It wasn't much. Suddenly, as you see, Thatcher's, you know, she came along and went, no, we're not having that. We're going to whack this massive tax on people. And I think it was just the fact that it was just brought in the way it was, and forcefully brought in, just like we're seeing here. And yeah, and then the reaction to it, they had to do the U-turn in the end. They watered it down to the council tax, which just became an individual property tax again, not on the individual.
I still think that her and Reagan were deliberately playing a tandem game of the shock doctrine, you know, disaster capitalism.
Yeah,
they were deliberately instituting things that were meant to create major changes in the financial markets. You know, part of the housing bubble, the sale of all the council properties and that kind of thing.
Buy your own. Yeah.
That was purposeful to lead towards some of the stuff that's going on now. Reagan did the same in America. He introduced certain things that just created shockwaves in their financial system.
Yeah.
Changing the business landscape kind of thing. Let me take that screen share off. I'm just going to check, was there any other ones I was going to mention? There was that one. I thought it's a bit of a a fear porn manipulation.
Oh yeah. Just
a woman who said she's exempt shopping in I think Farm Foods, which is like a discount bulk store in the UK. You know, says she's exempt. She's walking around the shop with no mask on, and even though she's telling them she's exempt, the police still issue her a PRN. You know, notice, a payment notice. In other words, an invitation to give them money,
which you refused.
I haven't read it fully, so I don't know if she did actually take it and pay it or anything like that. But I thought it was good. Part of the reason I kept it open, because as Tassie has been doing regularly here on the show and in the chat and on the reality chat, which we do on a Wednesday night, she puts the link in that goes direct to the government's website, where you can read for yourself what the exemptions are. So you can see that they're making it clear that you don't have to follow this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you are exempt, you don't have to walk around wearing a lanyard. That's a personal choice. You know, if you want to wear a lanyard or a bit of, you know, an ID card or whatever that says you're exempt, that is totally a personal choice. You're not required to do that. It's not legal required or anything like that. So at least the Daily Mail did actually go to the journalistic effort of, you know, putting that kind of information there for the readers. I thought it was worth looking at just for that sake. But it does come across as typical Daily Mail fear mongering.
So, like people reading that saying, I don't want that to happen to me, just wear your mask, it's a lot easier. Yeah,
but it's just that effect of, even though she's telling them stuff that's well within the law, you know, even the bullshit manipulations of the COVID regulations or requirements, she's perfectly in her rights. You know, she's perfectly correct in what she says, but they still issue her with a liability notification. You know, a fine basically is what they'd call it in layman's language. Yeah, how can they do that? They obviously don't know what the fuck they're doing.
No. Again,
Some of it could be deliberate theatre.
Getting
to make it,
stalked in the supermarket by the cops. Yeah, it's like,
this is that application of fear of, oh, you don't want to be one of those people that stands out and the police, come and have to deal with you and give you a fine because you're not put your mask on and you're not walking around wearing your yellow star. That's the kind of psychological manipulation, nudge unit bullshit.
Yeah. And this mainstream media, I mean, they've got a lot to answer for, this bunch of clowns and these people not telling you what you need to know. Journalism doesn't exist anymore, does it? It seems that, that in the mainstream went a long time ago. And they are, all across the globe, whatever country you're in, you're being propagandized and manipulated by your own media and controlled in that way to think a certain way and to even behave and act and, everything, through that sort of propaganda arm of the mainstream. And, if they were just, told half of what's really going on, things would change tomorrow, if they were just honest about it, because this is what's happening. I'm just thinking about other things that have been going on more recently. We're just not telling you the whole truth about anything, even the testing, in a medical sense, there's a load of doctors there saying, complete opposite about what we're being told. The politics world as well, that's affected. Everything seems to be, coming to be seen, as we said, the revealing, this, we can see it all. We can see all the corruption. We can see the lies. We can see all of it now being like, presented before our eyes this year. And now we're hitting a good time of the year where we'll hit the conjunction and let's just see where we go next year. Like I say, spring has sprung,
in many ways it's being offered as a choice because they want this to stick. Novus Ordo Seclorum and all that, a new world order for the ages. They want this to stick in a permanent fashion so that the future generations adopt it as the new normal, the new normality.
Yeah.
So therefore they wouldn't conceive of living a life without the state being in all of your business all the time. Yeah. So they know that they need to offer it as a choice. The supplicant has to choose to follow the requirements to be allowed into the cult. And in doing so, they willingly, this is a fucking manipulation of it, they willingly step through that doorway. That then gives them more power over that individual. And I don't mean that in a kind of magical way. There's a lot more psychological power that takes place because the person chose willingly to do what was asked of them. A lot of that willingness, that's why I was doing it in parentheses, with the bunny ears, a lot of that willingness is engineered in a fraudulent fashion. They trick people. They don't give them all the information, or they tell them outright lies. They say, oh, it is good for you, when they know full well it won't be good for you, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Or they introduce organizations like Tavistock to fuck with your head.
Yeah.
And people like that over the generations.
Deliberately disingenuous and deceptive in their methods.
Yeah.
But the main point I wanted to point at with this, pointing at the pointy thing, was just that element of they're offering you a choice. All this stuff that they've been rolling out is only happening, really, the real crux of where the rubber meets the road, the dirty end of the shovel, etc. Like the small businesses implementing requirements like, oh, you can't come in unless you wear a mask. You got to stand on the little dot over there. You got to have the plastic shield in. Can't use cash. All these are just suggestions, and the world only changes because people choose to go along with that suggestion. So again, like you said, we'll see in the new year how this choice is made. Is the majority going to choose to actually willingly take part in a technocratic dystopia? Do they choose the supposed safety from that invisible enemy rather than their liberty and freedom for what little we have of it? But even so, don't want to give up that little bit. or do they choose to do something else? It's become, I think, the cliche of the century now, because a lot of the things we've been discussing over the last several months are discussions that took place 100 years ago, 200 years ago, certainly around 200 years ago, when a lot of the countries around the world went through major political and social changes. You know, there was a few revolutions, and there was some major changes made to things like people's rights, you know, people's inalienable rights being acknowledged and institutionalized in an unfortunately required fashion. The system, if you're going to have a system, the system requires a kind of a basis in a virtual world of one form or another. I've talked about it in the past, like the paper world. You know, it's like the virtual world. It's just because it says it on a piece of paper. Hang on, find me a bit of paper. Just because you write it down on a bit of paper does not make it instantly some kind of magical authority. This bit of paper does not have any authority over anyone else. The concept does, and it's the symbols on the paper that represent the concept that is conveyed from one to another. Yeah, so it's like a contract that is being offered and made. But that, you know, consensual participation, people have the opportunity to make that choice. They don't need to. I shouldn't say need. I'm trying to think of a better word to describe what I'm trying to say. I think it's been more than proven throughout the history of our people, of our cultures, of society, the way we share it, that you don't need to become an insanely fascistic corporatist state to save yourself from the yearly flu. You know, it's just not required. There's however many billions of us on the planet, supposedly too many, you know, according to some of these bullshit artists. But there's 6+ billion of us, nearly 7 billion of us on the planet. And this is after we've spent tens of thousands of years surviving the seasonal flu each year. So
amazing, isn't it? It's amazing. It's, you think, wow. And now
all of a sudden now we need this like super over the top track and trace surveillance police state set up to be able to survive and
capture all that energy coming in the few months ahead, and try and hijack it all and create the great reset that they want, by, you know, creating as much chaos as they can leading up to this moment, or leading up to this time, you know. So that's interesting.
It has become like the cliche of the century.
Yeah,
these things are only happening because you choose to go along with them. I know that means that there's problems created, like, for example, the people that got arrested down in London over the weekend, and in other places around the UK and all over the world. There's people's businesses have been shut down. They're getting fined because they basically told the police to go away. You've got no authority here. Leave me alone to conduct my trade. But they're getting stomped on. There is an unfortunate period of the tyranny revealing itself that guaranteed causes people suffering and loss. You know, I know I'm talking a lot of cliches tonight, but as others have pointed out over the years, over the decades and centuries, as Gandhi revealed it, you know, when you put your body in front of the tyranny and the tyranny cracks down on you, everybody else sees what happens. That then reveals the tyranny. To reveal the tyranny, unfortunately, means that some people get hurt.
But it also means as well we've won.
Yes, exactly. Once you force their hand to that point, they've already lost.
Yep.
If you can't have a debate and provide proof for your argument in such a way that you do it through your words, through your reason and your argument as it's applied, as soon as you resort to physical force, you've lost the argument.
Yeah.
They're resorting to physical force. They've already lost the argument. I think they lost it several weeks ago, which we talked about here.
Yeah.
The narrative shifted.
Yeah.
And now a lot of what we're hearing from them, I think, is them laying the groundwork ready to deflect the inquiries that are going to start coming their way.
Yeah.
So they're creating a narrative that what they did, the lockdowns and the requirements that they put in place, is justified because, look, like they mentioned it today again, the R number is going down. So our efforts have made a difference. They're creating the justification to excuse their actions so they can try and avoid any liability that comes their way.
Yes.
Literally thousands of people have died through lack of treatment.
Mm-hmm.
It could go to the extent of second-degree murder or corporate manslaughter. So they know they need to protect their own asses. So most of what we've seen for the last few weeks, I think, is them doing damage control, trying to get the ground ready to say, look, see, we saved you. Aren't you glad you got the jab now? This will protect you. Way. Forget about the fact that those thousands of people died. Oh, no. That was just unfortunately required, just like Thanos said. You got to get rid of all the dead wood, so that everybody else can have a good time.
Well, we've got to the critical points, haven't we? In which direction we all go. And I mean, there are those who are going to be so helplessly stuck in the matrix, so stuck in that belief system, and that this is all real. They're going to remain there. And then there's going to be the rest who don't go that direction, and who knows? Like I say, it's just it'd be interesting times we're heading into. I said this before many times. It's great to be alive through these times. It's just
a good time to see all these revelations, the revealing taking place.
The truth coming out, stuff we've talked about for donkey's years now. Just been this year. Just there you go. Oh yeah, look at that. There you go. And that's all just. And like you say, the Stasi, the police state, that's becoming, like you say, my concern mainly as it gets more, but I think numbers and things and the way the police are going to maybe react going forward, they are getting filmed looking at absolute dickheads at the moment, absolute terrible police, and it's just so bad. You
can see on some of their faces.
Yeah.
In particular, the ones that are not the TSG. Like I said earlier, that particular tactical strategic response squad or whatever they're called, they're the thugs. They don't give two fucks,
No.
But you look at some of the others, they're standing around and you can just see it in their eyes. They're not comfortable. They're not happy, but the problem is it's no good just being not happy, mate. You have to start actually being a constable the way you're supposed to be, a peacekeeper. Forget all this oath to the royals and all that shit. No, your oath is to the people. The royals are just the titular representation of the power of the people.
Yeah.
Supposedly, if you take their own words at the value they've written on the paper, as they're written on the paper, then the Queen is just a representative of the power of the people. So when a constable swears an oath to the Queen, what he's really doing is swearing an oath to the people. Or that's what it should be in his mind when he does it, in his heart when she does it, because that's where the real power lies. The royals are only there because people allow them to be there. When the people's mood changes, they get taken down, just like in France, like a few hundred years ago. When people have had enough of the tyranny, they change direction. But I wanted to mention it, like Jason's put in the chat, last time they kept talking about getting the R number down, the infection rate down. Now they're repeating the line about preventing the NHS from getting overwhelmed because of the Christmas holiday break that we're all being allowed to have, And it's the same bullshit, because when you look at the figures for previous years, I think we were talking about this point last week, the NHS is operated like a business. The NHS is always running on near capacity because it is financially wasteful. It's waste of resources to have empty beds, empty wards, empty theatres. So they don't operate in that fashion. They're always running near capacity. So this concept that they're getting overwhelmed, look, folks, they're getting over, it's utter bullshit.
Yeah.
That should have been proven to people when all those Nightingale hospitals remained pretty much completely empty. They had a handful of patients in those hospitals. They weren't required. They were just a white elephant to create a show, a circus show for the public to make it look like, oh, be afraid, but we'll save you.
I remember the ventilator thing, you know, the stories about all the ventilators, the thousands and thousands and millions of ventilators we're going to need.
Yeah, that was another quango.
Yeah.
I bet all of them are stacked up in warehouses somewhere now because they're not required.
And they've just cashed the check.
Yeah. One of Handycock's mates already made his few billions out of selling them to the NHS. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, they don't like that Sir Philip Green, do they? They fucked him right up, I think. His business empire's gone to shit.
Is that Arcadia?
Yeah, Arcadia, dude. And Ashley, the other one, the other retail mogul, is trying to step in and take the mantle of, like, you know, this, man. Yeah, there's no high street. Like they're destroying everything anyway, I think, and they're taking it into a, you know, like I would say, a lower standard anyway on the high street. They've been doing that for a long time. Lowering the sort of what's available, and you know, certainly in outside of the big cities anyway.
I do think that was a deliberate way they've been manipulating that bereavement process. They're making the small business owners jump through hoops like performing monkeys, knowing full well they've got no intention of actually genuinely trying to help them deal with this situation. They're just putting them through like a trial by fire. If the business owner can shift the way they do their business in some fashion such that they can survive these new requirements, then the government doesn't need to do anything to help them anyway, does it? But if they're not capable of fitting in with the new abnormal, then they're just going to get put out of business. They get removed. They get eradicated. They get amalgamated into the big mega corporations, which is what the system really wants. They want to remove independent, I'll use what is normally considered a bad word, independent sustainability from individuals within the populace.
Yeah.
In other words, you as an individual can't own your own business and sustain you and your family via that business. No, you can have a business that you run as a franchise that's part of a big mega corporation where there is no singular owner. This is the key point. Yeah, they don't want anyone that's not in the club to be in a position of owning their own ability of independence. No, you have to be just a shareholder. I think it might have been Tazzy that mentioned this to us before we started. Thanks, Taz, for sharing the info. Some of the loans that they're offering to small businesses are being provided under the kind of contractual agreement that if the business owner can't sustain themselves, then in exchange for further help from the government, they have to hand over 50+% of their business. In other words, a controlling share in their business. So this is, again, like the clip I showed from the infographic of Mussolini, nothing outside of the state. You're not allowed to independently own your own business and run it for your own sustainability. No, it's got to be a part of the state system. Well, you can operate it and they'll let you take a wage and what, but they own the controlling share. They get the controlling profit out of it.
Yeah, and it all feeds into that Agenda 2030 as well. The new one, the add-ons they put onto it, more goals for them to achieve. Yeah,
there's probably further now as well, like 2040 and whatever. It's just a rolling policy document, really.
Doomsday policy. Yeah. Like,
this will be the new world, which will include genetically altered bioorganisms, whether they be people, genetically altered via vaccines, or the food that you consume.
Yeah.
Even in their own statements about the mRNA vaccines, they've made it clear that they cannot 100% predict the results, and it is pretty much irreversible with no technology available today. They can apply it, but they couldn't reverse the results of that application. They may be able to in the future when their magic technology gets more magical, you know. But
no, watch that video I talked about. Yeah, watch that video I talked about before, that TED talk thing, because that they have got that, you know, and I'm sure that who knows what's in these vaccines. People have always said I know there's lots of horrible, nasty ingredients in there anyway, but what else can they put in there to trigger something, like you say, within your own biology to replicate or to just implant into your brain and switch certain areas of your brain on and off? That's technology that's out there. That's what that video explains, which is really, like I say, creepy shit. And you know, if you get that introduced into your body through, you know, the vaccine, you know, that's why I think they've always been experimenting on us anyway, as we know.
And they won't be liable for it.
No, because you've willingly gone up there and said, yeah, I'll have it.
Yeah.
COVID's so bad, yeah, even though I haven't ever seen it and there's nothing they can identify it or whatever.
Even when they told you directly that the company cannot be held liable for any adverse effects. So if you start growing gills, you know, tough shit, you're gonna have to start living underwater. You can't complain about it. But I share this link as well because this connects in a similar fashion and talking about what really makes you ill. You know, it's just a simple title, but talking about things like the vaccines and the questions over viruses and stuff like that. Yeah. Thanks to Patrick for sharing this link. This is actually on the Bernician's channel. Yeah, the Bernician or Bernician, however you wish to pronounce it. Go and check it out. It's an hour and a half long, so you know, one of them ones to sit and listen to and think about. But that's two doctors talking about their many years of research into these questions, and obviously, they've got books available about the subject and etc. But again, I think it's to that point of the revelation is providing a choice. Are people going to carry on just accepting the authority of the status quo as it currently is with the kind of Rockefeller medicine setup, where it's a magic pill to cure anything and everything, and it's each year they come up with new things for you to be ill with that they can then give you a pill for, or sell you a pill, I should say. So it's just like a commercial nosedive. It's a ever decreasing circular spiral problem, a spiral downwards into they talk about black holes with the dense object at the bottom. In effect, that's what these kind of principles of belief in that external authority leads to, a crushing density of craziness.
We've seen that this year.
You've got the too many eyeballs problem, haven't you? You've got two. You don't really need two, so therefore you need this pill, to help you with your too many eyeballs problem. But that was a good listen. I listened to that the other night. To check that out if you want to. I'm not sure if there was anything else I'd kept open. Yeah, I've already shown that one. Yeah, that was about it on the links I had. There was a few. As I said at the start, it's like there's been that much happening within the last few weeks. I don't feel it's really serving much of a purpose to fixate upon one particular thing. The situation is only
everything's flowing together.
And in terms of what the ubiquitous they, in terms of what they are doing, it hasn't really changed. All of this is really based upon how many of the general populace start to wake up out of their fear madness. That's all. That's what's going to make the changes. That's what's going to actually influence what happens.
That's the tipping point now we're at, I think, isn't it? That's where we're heading, and that's where the balance will shift in our favor, I'm sure.
What the state is doing hasn't changed much for the past few months. They're doing the kick the can down the road, placate the public by telling them we're doing something to help them, dangle a carrot, use the stick to drive them in whatever direction,
Yeah.
and meanwhile roll out the implementation of that great reset societal change. That's what they've been doing week after week for the past few months. So sort of fixating on analysing what they're doing, I don't think there's any purpose anymore.
Mm.
You know, I've seen a lot of people over the last few weeks, like content creators, basically going through that process of like, oh, this week they're saying this. And it's like, yeah, they said that like 2 months ago, mate. So they haven't changed their story. They're still using the same script.
Yeah.
What's changed is the general populace is gradually sort of going, oh, hang on a minute. You know, it's a bit like the closer they get to the brick wall in that speeding vehicle, that speeding bus,
Yeah.
the bandwagon that we've all been forced to get on. The wall is getting closer and closer, and more people are starting to go, what the fuck? Yeah, reach for the brakes.
Yeah.
That's just a matter of patience, and hopefully empathy and compassion to not throw back at people their own fear.
Yeah.
Because that's most of what we're having to deal with, like that poor woman in the supermarket, you know, not having a mask on. You get people's fear projected at you because they've been terrified by the government. You're not the one that caused them to be terrified. The government is. The government is the terrorist. You're trying to help people remember that they never used to be afraid of the flu like this, did they? Yeah. So come to your senses, shake off that fear.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let me say a quick hello. I better not like that because otherwise I'll cough more. I'll say a quick hello because I've noticed there's a few.
I haven't even looked in the chat tonight. Let's just have a quick look. God,
thanks to everyone for joining in the chat.
Hello, everybody.
And I think I may not be able to scroll all the way back. So if I do happen to miss you out, it's what I usually say, caveat, sorry I miss you out. It's just the cache has hidden you away. But hello to what's up? I can't get people here to understand a mandate is not a law and you do not have to wear a mask. Yeah, so that's pretty much across the board, right? And it does come back, I feel it comes back to that people's just willingness to believe in authority. They don't want to have to think about it. They don't want to have to figure it out for themselves. They just want somebody in a uniform or wearing a badge or carrying a clipboard to just tell them what to do. So they don't have to, worry themselves about it. They can just carry on enjoying their day, filling in all the social media information into the database so that the AI can create their future for them. Gas mask, hello. There's so much info online. You can find docs to support whatever your perceived narrative is. Well, that's true, mate. But then you corroborate that narrative to what you see around you in the observable world. And, what's left out of that deductive reasoning is probably what the narrative actually is. So I know the kind of thing you're pointing at, but it's a circular argument. Your very own argument is circular. So, I don't think it's something to get too hung up on. Yeah, you can find lots of evidence online to prove that the moon is made of cheese, but then corroborate that to your own observations and other sources of information. And what's likely to be the answer? It's not made of cheese. Obviously, it's made of cheesecake, not cheese. You get the point. I know what you mean. And it's just, it can be a sticking point for many people to give up, to fall into apathy with their own research and looking for information, because they feel like, well, I can find evidence to prove whatever the fuck I want. Yeah, you can, but does that mean that's good evidence? Is it a good argument? Yeah. It's just easy to dismiss things because somebody in authority can tell you, oh, well, you go online, you can prove anything. Abraham Lincoln was a zombie hunter, according to the internet. So, you're talking like you're in fucking school, for fuck's sake. There's known knowns and known unknowns. I know I saw some other names as well. Vintanag, hello. The NSA is making a list and checking it twice. Yeah. Santa's in isolation, so it'll be the NSA sending out the presents this year. Hopefully you don't get a Predator drone.
It's Satan's claws. I keep saying it to people.
Yeah,
Not
Satan's claws.
He got his claws into us. Man.
Yeah. I'm scrolling down. Thanks everyone for joining in the chat. James, hello, chat room ninja. Joe gets in
hello,
the chat
James,
when you're not expecting. Or maybe it's a bit like the Spanish Inquisition. Did you notice the guy dressed as Monsignor at the London protests?
Yes, in the red. Yes, I did. He was in quite a few.
I was waiting for him to hold up a comfy cushion. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. I don't know if that was his intention or whether there's something else going on there, but yeah, it stood out a bit. Some guy running around with the bright, it's like a deep red colour, isn't it?
Yeah, I saw him quite a few times, and there's some good footage up of him because lots of people seem to be. I've seen quite, people on the ground filming and stuff. We've put it up onto YouTube and stuff, and come across a few channels, which is some good footage, better than RT, and things like that.
Yeah. Hello to Jay Bates as well. We should have a plasma event that kills all the TVs and cell phones. Yeah.
Well, we nearly had one, We had one, I think it was yesterday, because I told you there's a massive sunspot coming off that limb, coming round, and it did let off. I think it just clipped us just slightly, but not much. It wouldn't cause much of an effect on Earth. But if it was a bit more in, it would have got a full hit off that, and that would have caused some issues.
Just as a general sort of observation prediction, because just like a lot of people say, I don't like to make predictions, but
not as yet. No.
I predict that major storm that produced the flare just over the limb, as that comes across the face that faces us, it will gradually fade out as it goes to the right.
Yeah.
Because that's often what happens, because you get that kind of like cancellation effect when it starts to interact directly with the Earth. So when it becomes Earth facing, they tend to fade out and die off.
Right.
But it's just a general observation. But I noticed I was listening to Suspicious Observers. The fact that there was an M-class flare within the last few days. Again, it's a very energetic time at the moment. Yes. The Beaver Moon. There's a lot of stuff going on leading up to that conjunction later in December.
21st.
There's a hell of a lot of energy going down at the moment.
Yeah. George
Wachowski, hello. Thanks for joining in the chat. TV is an enema. Reverse. Yeah, right. Did Zappa do an album called something like that? TV is an enema or something like that? I can't remember. He did that many albums, I don't know. And Jeff censored, hello, mate. Thanks for joining in the chat. I hope you're doing all right. I've been catching up on your videos over the last couple of days. And I think, Manos Mill, hello. I'm not sure if the feed is working all right or not. I haven't checked my YouTube page for a while we've been yakking. Like I do once I get talking, I get distracted and I forget to read the chat room and do all those other kind of things that you're supposed to do as a content creator, broadcaster, whatever it is.
Which I forget to do as well most of the time.
I'm not doing this professionally. I'm not an expert on anything. I'm not getting paid for doing anything. I just do this because I think it's the right thing to do. So it is deliberately amateur. Yeah, that's why I don't bother with like the fancy background graphics and all that kind of shit and fancy camera work and whatnot. It's just me with a camera and a microphone, 2 turntables and a microphone kind of thing. But we're doing, rather than doing hip hop lyrics, we're doing hip hop cognitive function, free association, and maybe to a certain degree. But I'd like to hopefully link it with bits of evidence and other reasoned arguments rather than just being a what's the word for it? A flow of consciousness kind of thing. Stream of consciousness, I should say. But okay, I'm going to wind it up there because I can feel my throat grinding and I'm just crackling up too much. Maybe just before we go, I'll check the magic box of memes.
Yes, we haven't looked there yet, have we? I did have a look before. There are some really funny ones.
Yeah, I tried to get into the habit of checking it, but I've just been too busy waffling on like I do. This was that story about the celebrities, the influencers, just to show the front page. I think Tony added the emoticon effects. Yeah, I find it interesting as well that they sort of slipped in the bit about the farmers. I think it might have been UK Column mentioned this on today's episode. The new incentives are going to be they're going to try and encourage the farmers to stop or to reduce the livestock breeding, use of livestock, and instead do other things like turn farmland into wilderness areas. This is Hunger Games agenda shit. The Agenda 2030 kind of stuff, the rewilding and the human exclusion zones of all that UN agenda program, and that sort of slipped in under this, NHS to use celebrities, celebrities. I wonder if my favourite celebrity is going to get the jab. It's just really low-brow manipulation shit. But yeah, there are some good ones in there. I'll read them out if you can't read it. So I need these vaccinations twice a year. Yes, twice a year, that's right. I heard these vaccines may be a bit dangerous. I can't quite read that one. Not at all. It's just conspiracy theories. What have you done? Yeah, we shall see as time rolls on just how much these genetically altering 90% effective vaccines.
Is that good enough for you? 90% or 92% maybe, or maybe push it to 93. Maybe that's safe for you.
They don't want to push it too far because it will seem disingenuous. If they said it's 99% effective, people would probably start asking questions.
Yeah. Well, after 3 weeks of them developing it.
Dino shared this one. I think it's just like, Qantas getting it up the ass. Get the jab in your ass, Qantas. I thought this was interesting. It was doing the rounds. Yeah, it's a good bit of subtle meme work as well. I know, notice the eagle banners with what is a battle flag. That's not actually the flag of the nation. That's a military flag, so it's got other legal connotations to it. That one. The COVID patrol.
Yeah.
And I'll leave it on that one. Think about how many police were out in London, just London, over the weekend on the Saturday. how over the top they reacted and jumped on people who were just, majority of people were just peacefully walking around, maybe chanting a slogan or waving a banner or whatever. Yeah, there was a handful of troublemakers, just like there always is, but the police was jumping on whoever. Yeah, even old people were getting dragged away. Where were they when it was the Black Lives Matter rioters? Yeah, it was a bit of a what's the word for it? Incongruity. Yeah, it's a good word. There's a lot of incongruities in the police actions over the last several months. They'll quite happily bend the knee or stand by and watch as criminal damage is done, destroying statues and things like that. But old people complaining about the lockdown, no, they're evil Nazis in disguise. You got to squish them before they take power. Yeah. So that in and of itself is a big conversation. But we talk about this stuff so many times over.
Well, we'll expand it on Wednesday probably, because we'll be talking the same, and I'll because it is ongoing, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's certainly, I think, hopefully it's become more obvious to more people now that so many more of the general populace, i.e. people who are not really into these kind of what would be considered fringe subjects and discussions, they just like sharing silly memes and stuff with their mates on WhatsApp or whatever, they've now started to encounter censorship based on what they're trying to share with their friends. The mainstream media has also had to directly address a lot of the questions and information that's been brought forward by the supposed conspiracy theorists. So the very fact that they're having to react to things that are happening in this environment, again, is a proof that we are making a difference. You are making a difference. Those little things that you do, it doesn't have to be a major big gesture. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It's just you stick in your ground, standing your ground, and being that consistent point of information and ideas, reasoned argument, and etc., etc. That is reaching through all that chaos that they're deliberately trying to create.
Yeah, and it's there. It's easy to see if you are on the right path, that you are seeing it now. Then it's a bit of a massive download in the last 8 months for some people, but that's what's been going on. That's where we're at.
I have seen
go next is important, and we're at that precipice now. I think that is coming. It's not far away.
I have seen a few more people now doing things that are deliberately meant to reach people who are, I know it sounds terrible to say, they're kind of like newbies. So I've seen more people sort of uploading stuff that's like a concise presentation to do with a lot of the subjects that we've been talking about for donkey's years,
Yeah.
So it's worked well in that sense as well. Like Corbett doing stuff like the one he did the other week about the trial balloon and the concept of that kind of media manipulation. Yeah. There's been a lot of concepts and ideas and evidence that has been codified in a very good fashion, such that it's not like it was back in the day, back in the 90s, when you was trying to tell somebody about some of this stuff like the Bilderberg, and they're like, well, what's your proof that? And you're like, hang on a minute, let me find this newspaper clipping from 20 years ago. And it's typical, kind of stereotypical conspiracy theory stuff. But now, through use of modern media and the refining process of many minds working on one idea kind of thing, lots of people working on similar stuff, we're getting a really good refinement process. So that now when you bring up a subject with people, they're like, what are you on about with that? You can go, well, go and look at this guy's work. He's covered it really well. You find all the information you want over there. Like people like the Bernaysian, all the stuff he's been doing about dealing with the law, dealing with the mortgage swindle, all that kind of stuff. It's like, it's a nicely codified body of information, a logos of useful information for people.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm rambling now, so I'll shut up. Thanks for joining us, folks. Thanks for joining in the chat. If you did, don't believe all the bullshit and hype. And if you can, try and be compassionate for those people that are caught up with the fear, because that's how they're being manipulated, their own fear of mortality. I know you have to draw the line at some point, but try and be nice. When dealing with the fascism, try and be nice.
Well, thanks anyway. Thanks for tonight. Cheers, man. And
All right. Thanks for giving us your attention for a couple of hours, folks. Thanks for Pete joining in. We'll be back again on Wednesday night on the Reality Chat channel, and we'll go into some of the other news stuff as well, like the assassination of the Iranian scientist.
That's another one.
The election craziness. It's there's so many things going down.
Still all going on. So we'll get into all that on Wednesday.
Right.
Thanks to all in the chat as well. Cheers, guys. Thank you for all your comments.
thanks again, folks. I was just trying to rearrange my window so I can find the button. We'll speak again soon. Take care. Don't believe the hype. Cut cheese.